The sport of off-road racing is full of incredible stories, wild characters, legends, and even villains. We cover it all on offroadracer.com, but there's only so much we can put down in an article. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, and that means sitting down with some of our industry's most influential characters and hitting record. Welcome to the Off-Road Racer podcast, a Mad Media production, made exclusively for offroadracer.com. Each month, we'll go beyond the dirt into the homes, shops, and lives of the most interesting and game-changing icons of our sport. You'll hear about their history, success, failure, and everything in between as we pull back the curtain and reveal the stories of their lives. I'm your host, Matt Martelli, and this is the Off-Road Racer podcast. I'm Matt Martelli. This is the Off-Road Racer podcast, and I'm here with the two-time champion, now Brayden Baker. What's up, man?
What up? It's awesome to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for coming down. I appreciate you doing this. I know you keep yourself pretty busy.
Yeah, we're always busy at the shop, prepping the race cars. I mean, we went back to back weekends racing, so just finally got a break from racing. Now just kind of getting ready for 2025 season.
Yeah, no, that's good. A lot of people don't know. I mean, let's talk about the fact that you're now for a few years you've been prepping and building your own cars. What's that like? Do you like doing that?
I like doing it. Sometimes I get burnt out doing it, but I mean, for the most time, it's awesome doing it and kind of knowing your car. I mean, most people, that don't prep their car might not know what happens during the race, or you feel like every little detail of the car when, like, if one little thing happens, you're like, oh, I know exactly what happened just because I prepped the car. So I feel like it's advantage sometimes.
Yeah, and in particular, like this car you just raced is a new car, right?
Brand new. We built in-house, spent kind of like the off time from after the mint, kind of building a new car. And we also had a lot of big sponsorship changes, so we kind of incorporated all that on the new car.
Yeah, and how do you like the new car? Obviously, it works because you came out of the gate, won the California 300 for the second year in a row.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. The new car worked really good. We kind of built kind of a new platform. We wanted to build a car super low, light, and kind of try to keep everything light and low and simple. I mean, the biggest thing is not over-complexing a car, so we tried to build it as simple as possible so we had less issues, and it worked really good. I mean, I was super stoked. For our second ever race with the car, and we won it. It was awesome. And to go back-to-back at the California 300, knowing how brutal that race is amazing. Yeah, I mean, look, I got to give you big props on that because it's not just, the race course. It's the field of racers and keeping your cool. We were talking about it earlier that, there's so many things that can go wrong, especially on a course like that, where you could potentially run into lap traffic and be in somebody's dust. You've got different lines you can take, and you can't necessarily memorize exactly what every different line is. So, I give you a lot of credit for winning it, not just once, but twice. I think it really shows like your evolution as a racer, your level of racecraft and that coming around because, there's a lot of easier races, right? And this one's definitely one that it has the competition, but also, it's a true desert off-road race. It's getting the finish line as a victory, but being able to, win. You've won, now both years. I think last year was 10 minutes. Yeah.
Right. And this year was 8.
Yeah.
Right. That's solid. Like, especially when you go look at the unlimited classes and they're winning by 1 minute, it's really, shows that you're putting down good lap times consistently.
Yeah, just trying to pick your own race. I mean, I always try to run my race and not worry about other people and kind of just, I know what the car is capable of and just running that race and not overdriving the car. And, sometimes you get frustrated in the dust if you're trying to battle with someone, but just keeping your composure and just kind of hitting your marks. Try not going off the course, making bad passes, and just kind of stick to your line and then pass where you need to. There's certain spots where I need to push to get by this person because I know it's about to get super tight up here, super dusty. So just kind of learning where you need to pass someone, and then there's certain spots, throughout the race when lap traffic comes in play, and making sure you get by those people without kind of losing that time. Because, if you're not in the mindset and you let these guys kind of just, you're pacing them, and then all of a sudden you could lose a minute that fast. So just kind of learning that and progressing over the year, kind of figuring out the pace and not overdriving the car. That's key nowadays, is not overdriving the car.
Do you think that's been kind of the hardest thing to learn?
Yeah, I feel like learning, what you're capable of in the car, because nowadays I feel like progressing as a driver, now I'm worried about overdriving the car and breaking the car, or figuring out, the pace nowadays for these UTVs is insane. I mean, I keep telling people it's getting faster and faster every year. You could see the pace, you could see the times. We're going from more of a golf cart now, and now it's battling 10 cars, and now we're beating 10 cars. It's crazy to me is how much these UTVs are progressing, and kind of nowadays I feel like the pace is like almost full speed now.
It is. It's interesting because I remember going through this evolution with the Mint where, we set the course in Prim, and we're like, oh, this is a rough course, right? It's not going to be a fast race. It's going to be more about survival. And, it kind of was, and it kind of is. But then the lap times progressively got quicker and quicker. And now, you have to be there on that final lap, but it's a sprint race, And that's what I feel like the California 300 is turning into too. It's like your lap times this year were about 20 minutes to a half hour faster than what we expected.
Oh, that's crazy to me. Just, I felt like it was fast all day, and I think towards the end they even got faster. I'm like, just, competitions just getting faster, and there's more people coming from different background or different classes. Now all of a sudden they want to get in the UTV game. So, the classes are for the UTV are just getting more stacked, and the competition's getting bigger. So, just kind of keeping up with the competition, and always building a new car, to keep up with everybody nowadays. It's just the manufacturers are upping their game. Cars are getting better. So, if you're not in that new platform, you might not be there, So just kind of trying to stay with the evolution of everything, the UTV stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's ongoing, man. It's a grind, especially when you don't have necessarily a big budget, again, it's remarkable that, how old are you now?
21.
Yeah, 21, and you're prepping your own vehicles and building your own race cars and winning, like that's impressive. I mean, it shows too that like you have what I believe is a really big future in front of you. Like at your age, you're only going to get better. And knowing, I agree with you that knowing the car and knowing the mechanics of the vehicle is a big advantage, right? Because when you feel something, you're like, okay, that's an axle. I know that either I got to pull over and change it, or whatever. You're 3 miles from the finish, you're gonna go, right? And being able to make those decisions informed is incredibly valuable. You guys weren't like born into this, I know you started racing with your dad. Talk about how you got into this, because you've only been doing this for how many years?
I think 5 or 6 probably now.
Yeah, that's crazy to me that like, let's say year 5, you won the California 300. I remember when you won UTV World Championship, and I'm like, okay, right? A lot of competition and everything, but, tell us how you got into this.
So growing up, my parents had a river house, and we used to go there, and it started kind of like going to my grandparents' house up there, and then all of a sudden my dad and my mom got a house out there, and we got some play cars, some UTVs. We used to have a Rhino back in the days, and kind of had a quad and just rode quads out there. Grew up riding the quad, and then all of a sudden, the UTVs slowly came out, and I talked my dad into getting a 900. So like a little Ace one-seater. So we kind of ripped that around. I think I even broke the frame at one point, and kind of asked, hey, let's go race it at UTV Worlds, And so we went to UTV Worlds and won it first time, and we kind of got hooked after that. And then we got a desert car and got into that, and we split driving duties with my dad and his buddy, and I kind of was like finished the races, like kind of was the last driver, and they let me do UTV Worlds a few times and do that, and then kind of progressed to racing short course and got an RS1 and player stepped on board and started helping us out a little bit. And so we kind of progressed from that, and then won UTV Worlds again or some in the 1,000, and then just kept doing more and more races. And a lot of sponsors slowly started coming on board, helping us. And, nowadays sponsorships help a lot. And most people, sponsorships, I feel like not a lot of people have sponsorships nowadays, but that little bit from a certain sponsor helping out, goes a long ways, because everything's expensive nowadays off-roading. So without sponsorships, the program wouldn't be the same. So doing that.
Nice. Yeah. And so then you did, in short course, you did WORCS, right?
Yeah. So I grew up doing WORCS. My mom or dad used to take me into certain races, and then I got my license and I was able to drive there. And then my dad got a trailer, and I ended up driving the trailer. I don't even think he's driven the trailer more than 2 times. So I kind of grew up going to the races with him, and enjoying more family time, hanging out with him. And my sister would go once in a while and just kind of like meet new people at the track, new friends. And then that grew up of, growing up more with them, and, learning knowledge with them, and kind of expanding from that. And then I felt like I learned a lot from short course, how to drive a UTV or a race car in general, and kind of use that knowledge into desert racing. And then learning that, in desert racing, you got to be a little more conservative and you can't go all out. So kind of learning that balance, but it was pretty good.
Yeah, WORCS is I think is a good learning platform. But it's pretty brutal, dude. Like the starts, I always look at it and I'm like, wow, you guys are all going into one corner in open wheel cars, right? So I think, it's like a pressure cooker. It teaches you really hard lessons quickly, right?
Oh yeah. I was like, there's multiple times you door in and the Nerf bars are hitting, and you can either win or watch first corner. So it just kind of like, that was always nerve wracking, especially like my first time racing. Just like, I think I remember my first pro race or amateur race out there at a WORCS race. I got the whole shot and I didn't even know what to do, because I was like, I don't know what to do. All these guys are right behind me. I was like, do I pull over? I didn't want to get the whole shot. And it was funny.
Yeah, those lessons are invaluable, though. Was there a desert race that you did that for your first time that kind of made you realize like that's the direction you wanted to go?
I feel like grew up like doing a lot of the Martelli series, like the Mint 400. Kind of opened it up when I ended up doing more driving at that one of the races, and ended up kind of liking it. That now it's more of you have time. If you make one little mistake, you have time to actually gain that back. And it's not a short course, it's not a 30-minute moto. Now it's a couple hours. And then learning that pace, setting that pace throughout the race. And I feel like it was probably 4+ years ago when I decided, desert racing, I ended up liking that more.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, was there, was there kind of a point where you had a little bit of success and you're like, oh yeah, now I'm really all in on this?
I think winning the UTV Worlds kind of changed that. I think when I kind of was hooked after I won a couple, the UTV Worlds, and figured, I can hang with some of these guys, and then, just need to be in a good platform. If you're not in a good platform car, you might not be successful as others. So just kind of being in a car that's equal to other cars, out there was kind of game changer too. Is not being in something that where you feel like it's not the driver.
Right.
And so kind of I noticed when I went to a new platform car, because everybody was all in these new platform car, and Dad, fortunate enough, gave me a car that was on equal playing field, and it ended up showing I'm actually I can hang with these guys, and I can win with these guys.
Did that surprise you though?
So I was kind of surprised, and because I was getting frustrated. I was always having issues with keeping up, where I'm like, I'm wondering why these guys were so much faster. And then getting in a car that was game changer to me was I'm like, okay, I can win. Like it's not maybe me, like maybe I'm not a bad driver. So kind of figuring that out, and and then working on the car and like figuring out, I can make these cars better by doing a few changes to the shocks, clutching, doing this, or car setups, or building your own car, to be kind of like what you like, like handling, and maybe you want the car to sit lower, and figuring that out. So learning all that and made a big difference too.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. At what point were you always working on your cars, or was there a point where you're like, okay, I've got to do this, whether, in order to win or to learn?
I grew up kind of, wanting to kind of work on it. And my dad, I don't think he's barely touched the wrench, at the racetrack. I bet if you point out a part, he might not even, I have to tell him what it is. But, I grew up kind of doing everything kind of, he said, if I'm going to pay for, the racing, you need to work on your own car. So kind of
figure it out.
So I just kind of figured it out. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have some mentors growing up that, taught me a bunch of stuff about machinery or prepping the car, or asking fellow racers, for advice, and, what they maybe do for prep, and maybe, then I figured out, okay, I need to do this, and just kind of figuring out what breaks every race and what you need to replace, and just kind of figuring that out over the years. And then also the new car platform comes out, and then you have to learn those parts and learn what breaks on that. So just kind of figuring out, all that. But I feel like the off-road community is so nice, everybody's willing to help each other for the most part, and kind of like sharing knowledge, so I'm always on the phone with people every day, getting new information, figuring out what, might work better, and kind of talking to the manufacturers. Manufacturers are helpful too, and they always want to make stuff better. My new sponsor, Justin Smith over there with Upfit, Shock Therapy, and all those companies, he always wants to make stuff better, and he wants to make, race car parts work for the average consumer. There's a lot of play car people out there, using the same parts I use on my race car. So we go out there in the desert and bash on the parts, and we make a part that's user friendly for that average consumer. So.
Yeah, Justin has a lot of knowledge, and obviously with Upfit and his all their company Shock Therapy, it's like understanding not just what'll break on the car, but car setup, right? Yeah. And then sharing that knowledge with you, that's got to be pretty huge.
Oh, it's huge. And we made a huge change with a bunch of sponsorships, especially going into the California 300. I didn't know what the shocks were going to do, what the new suspension is doing, all the Shock Therapy parts, and kind of we spent the time, dialing in the shocks and making changes, and, it worked amazing. Justin's, really awesome with what he does, and, sharing knowledge, and, I give him feedback. He makes a few changes, and then boom, it's way better, and just giving that feedback with him, and testing products for consumers, it's all in the right way, direction.
Yeah, I love seeing that correlation, especially when you have an owner like Justin who's raced before and is engaged in racing and supporting racing, and using it as a test bed for products that you can go buy, like you said, for your play UTV. And know, like, hey, this sway bar, or this, shock link, or these shock setups, they're as good as what the race guys are using. So I love seeing that correlation. And, they're one of the guys who've always led that, in our sport and culture, which is really cool. Now you're over at Rivershore, so that gives you like a, kind of a home to prep and stuff. So has that helped you as well?
Oh, that helped a lot. Growing up with, Rivershore Motorsports helped a lot. They make amazing parts. They help me with everything. The fab side, we built the new race cars there at Rivershore, and, we're always helping out with making new products with the new cars coming out and making, cool products. I know we have Brendan Schaub's car there too. So we're making some cool stuff for his car, and, stoked to see him out there. But it was nice, having a shop. A lot of people can't say they have a shop, and they build their cars out, or they prep their cars out of a garage. So having a big workspace, and over there at Rivershore Motorsports, and we always want to improve stuff. So we're always trying to make things better. And, if we broke a front end or something, we could fix it.
Yeah.
Most people, have to take it to a fab shop, and then they have to spend the heavy bill, from those guys fixing it. So, having the guys at the shop, every day, wanting to make the car better or wanting to improve. We built 2 cars in 1 year, just because we wanted to make the evolution. There's a new, better thing out there, so let's stick with it and be on top of the game.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, they've got a great setup over there, and yeah, I'm excited about Schaub's car. Obviously, he's excited to come race with us this upcoming year. Parker will be his first race, and we that was part of the reason why we're like, hey, where do we send this guy, right? And so that he has a good experience and a good car. And it's like, well, let's call the champ and see what he's doing, right? That was pretty obvious. So I'm glad that's working out. But yeah, it must be good to just have people to bounce stuff off of and have have them help you when you get into certain situations with car builds. You're like, well, I don't know about this, but now you can ask Rob or somebody else.
Yeah, having them and having everybody in house. I mean, we did everything in house, from plumbing, fuel lines, wiring, everything. That whole build was all built in house. We even steel it coated the car out front. So we did everything for the new car and our previous car all in house, and Brennan Schaub's car is all in house. So it's nice not going into different companies. Most people, have to drop it off for wiring here, or do plumbing here, or do the chassis here, part of it here. So, doing everything in-house, made a big difference too.
That's got to feel really good for you. It's one thing to have a successful performance and know hey, driver capability, I'm on point. But when you look at, especially the field of people you're racing against who have a lot of support, and you built the car and then you race the car, right? That's almost like a throwback to the old days of racing when, racers were building their cars and other forms of racing. That's got to feel pretty good, right?
Yeah, it feels really good, and I grew up, looking at Robbie Gordon and Robbie Woods, all these, Carson Weirmont, we used to before when they were all in it, all these people are in it. So, growing up watching all those people, and I think we have a picture of me and Robbie. I was like a little kid watching him in his truck, and now his son's racing, and we're good friends with them, and just watching, his background, him telling me, he built his trophy truck in a barn, and then how he kind of involved. So kind of
as a racer builder,
seeing that, and and kind of the footsteps what I'm doing, I feel like is different. And compared to what other people are doing, I feel like everybody has their own story of, how they become a off-road enthusiast.
Yeah.
So, just working with the right people, I feel like made a big difference.
Attention race fans, unlimited off-road racing returns to Parker, Arizona with the second annual Parker 400, Wednesday, January 15th through Sunday the 19th. Bring your friends and family to kick off the start of the 2025 race season. Come meet your favorite drivers, see the latest and greatest off-road products on the market at the Parker Downtown Experience, and witness 3 days of non-stop door-to-door racing. Check theparker400.com for more information. The Parker 400 returns.
Yeah, you've had some pretty significant wins in a very young career. What is there a race that you look at and you're like, hey, I want to get this one?
It's been the Mint. I mean, I haven't won the Mint yet, and that's been a race of mine that I've been wanting to win for a while. I'm always hard on myself. I feel like I should win every race, so I'm always pushing, trying to win every race. And I get hard on myself when I, a stupid little part breaks, or if it was a driver mistake. So, I should look at the bright side of all the races I won, and back to back in the championship for the Martelli series, and sometimes that doesn't sink in.
Sure.
So because I'm always hard on myself, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's good to be driven, but I also think there are guys who've been doing this for 10 years, more, right? That haven't gotten the level of victories that you've gotten, right, or that you've achieved. So, I think you need to take a second and recognize that. Go, okay, I've built something that is good, and also too, like I always say it, like, you can't build on DNFs. You always got to get there to the finish line, and then you can improve and improve and improve, and eventually you're on podium. Eventually you're first place. You've gained that racecraft where all the variables, and you can eliminate as many as possible. But the reality of off-road racing is that $5 part's going to fail. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like everything can be perfect and that rock can pop out, or you get caught in somebody's dust and then it's not your day. For you, obviously, I've watched you're working your ass off. This is a lot. This is hard. What do you think there is about off-road racing that, keeps you going, keeps you engaged in it?
I driving the cars during the race, that thrill you get driving a race car, or even just a play car, but going out there, hanging out with friends and family, and, people supporting you, that always is nice. And watching my dad and those guys on the sidelines cheering us on, or on the radio, or coming into the pit, you can see they're all stoked, and watching us do good, that keeps us going, and all the people, that talks about like, oh, I watched your race online. We're, at home watching all day, racing. And then you're like, oh, there's, people care to watch, and then all these people are like, what happened? Why is the live stream or something? It was glitching up for a second. And they're like, then seeing how many people, were really intrigued watching, and that always is motivated. A lot of people, care, and they're all watching, from home.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about you that I've observed is that you're earning it, right? And like you haven't, you've incrementally gotten better and better, but you've really earned it. And I think people relate to that. They look at, the world now, and they're like, hey, this guy's like me. Nobody handed him all the cheat sheet, or handed him a built car, or whatever. It had to be earned. And so when you watch somebody go through trials and tribulations and then they are victorious, I think that everybody relates to that. They look at it and they go, hey, I feel that way,
Yeah, there's a lot of, growing up, or even like the new platform, no one really gave us anything. Like we kind of had to figure out our issue, or we have an issue with the diff, then all of a sudden we have to make a fix for it. And then we're talking to them, our cryo heat, or certain people to fix that. And then, or there's a new part we didn't know about that, we have to be running because it's way better. So, growing up, I didn't have that level of support for that. Right. So figuring that out, made a big difference. And kind of, I wasn't always given everything that, other people I felt like had. So, growing up, figuring out all those issues, and, and then finally getting successful after figuring out the platform, it took a long time to, figure out this new Polaris platform. And, I feel like now we have it pretty dialed where, we could go to a race and not worry that, a part's going to fail, and we can run the car our race and not worry about that. So I feel like that was, not everything too, like our whole program, some people might look at, we have everything, or, money bought all this, but, sponsorships, is where, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be racing, without sponsorships. Or, growing up, I had Jason Gorsuch with Rivershore when it first evolved, helped, fund everything. My dad, funded as much as he could afford, for us. We didn't have a budget as some of these other UTV teams. And, now we're fortunate enough to have another sponsor, Justin Smith, help a lot. Now we're able to have Starstream and bring all the people at home that live stream, and having better equipment on the car, all the equipment on the car, is, if there's on the side of the door, is the sponsorship stuff. I don't put people on the side of the door if they're not helping, because, my dad does a lot and all these people do a lot. So, if they're not doing a lot too, then, they wouldn't be on the door. So, fortunate enough to have, a lot of companies wanting to work with me now, and, want to make better products for consumers. And my biggest thing is trying to bring stuff to the table that works for everybody, the average consumer, and trying to make a brand for myself too. Racing isn't cheap, obviously. So,
right.
Trying to make a brand, kind of branding myself to everybody. And I know, you helped me out a lot, teaching me, making myself a brand to everybody.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. It's something that people don't understand. It's like, it's interesting because like we deal with it all the time where a racer will spend whatever amount on a transmission, and then you're like, hey, do you have any social media? Do you have a website? Do you have a bio? Like just the basics of like, telling people who you are and what your story is. And, it's a little bit of a daunting task for some people, but the reality is just, let people in, because not everybody's going to identify with one character, right? There's a character within off-road racing that appeals to everybody. That's one of the coolest things about our culture, is the diversity of it. But the racers, you got to do the work, right? And I think that we proved years ago when we started doing work with Ken Block that like racing was a component of it, but then everything that goes on in between all the other races is equally as important, and that you can't shut off, 2 days after the race and be like, oh, we'll just wait to have a conversation until the next race, which might only be 4 times a year or what have you. That brand, that content has to be, constant, and fortunately or unfortunately, you can't produce enough content, per the amount of consumption that's out there. It's like every day everybody's waking up and they're doing the death scroll and looking for something that's going to stimulate them, so the appetite is big, and but there's a lot of opportunity in that.
I know a lot of people. A lot of people want to see what you're doing every day. They want to see what you're up to. So always stay on top of that, and all your sponsors and promoting them. And I feel like kind of like giving people the everyday of what's going on, I feel like is a big thing. And and trying to promote a bunch of people, and like what Ken Block, like that scenario, he did a bunch of racing too, but a lot of people knew him for all the content he had every day, talking about that. And I feel like just staying on top of all that media stuff, and I feel like you have to spend, like, if amount of money you spend racing, you got to spend a lot in media for that. You got to spend a lot of getting all the media guys at the races, hiring them to do all the videos. So you have a bunch of content, after the race to talk about and show people, what your products you're running on the car, or show them your badass race car. So during the race and how good it handles. So just kind of, I feel like you have to spend that much money, or not a lot, but enough, during the race, after paying for all that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Has there been, because you've done a lot more than you have in the past, you've been increasing the amount of content that you've been putting out on your channels, and obviously another big win is going to get you a lot of attention as well, because you're here on the podcast, and because of that, and because of our relationship, is there stuff that you see in the future that you're like, hey, I'd really like to do this, race wise or content wise?
I would like to, do a lot more content, obviously, and to afford, to keep doing more content and kind of talk about, more stuff like consumer, and doing orgo testing, and, show people, hey, this is, what I think of this product, and do a lot more, in depth at the shop videos. That's what I kind of want to do more. Kind of show people, what we're running, this is what we put on the car, and this is what it looks like after the race. Or doing a lot more off racing, and talk about, going to Camp Razor or something's coming up. So do a whole vlog about that, and our experience, going to this event and talking about everything, and meeting new people and talking about that. I feel like it's more of a lifestyle you got to talk about more.
Well, yeah, I think you're a good candidate for that, because you're pretty much 24/7 racing, right? And when you're not racing, you're in a play car. So I think that a lot of people would look at your day to day and be very interested of like, okay, this guy came back from a race. Now he's got to tear down a car, get it ready for the next race. You're working on customer cars, helping with those. Like, you're doing a lot. It's funny because and you take on a lot of responsibility and risk because, you just did 3 races back to back?
Yeah.
You won 2 of them. And what happened at the last one?
Broke the gas pedal in half.
Well, I guess that's a good way to lose. You were pressing on the gas pedal so hard you broke it.
Yeah. And that was, back to back, was crazy, the short amount of time. And, we didn't want to half-ass anything. So we basically, in between, we did everything. We literally swapped the front diff, rear diff, axles, hubs. We went through the transmission. We did a leak down. We even swapped the motor one of the weekends in between, and looked over the whole car, cleaned it. Like, there's so much that's involved, especially running the pro pace. I feel like the pro class pace compared to a sportsman class or a different class, is way different.
Yeah.
So I feel like now it's like we're running 100%, and these cars are on the verge of breaking every race. So
yeah,
unfortunately, last race we broke the gas pedal, and so it's like there's odd parts here and there. Like we broke, we had a rough season with random parts breaking. We broke a flywheel for some reason one race, and then broke a gas pedal. So there's just certain like little bugs, you're learning about every race that there's a certain mileage you have to go off of, how many you could do before, this part, should be replaced.
Yeah, duty cycle.
And there's a lot of parts, on these cars that we replace that are perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But we don't want to risk that issue. So a lot of people look at our prep, we do, and they're like, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of parts, you're replacing. I'm like, well, the pace we're doing nowadays, we have to replace that part because, we don't know, if we go an extra 100 miles on it, if it's going to break. So it's just kind of, we don't want to take that risk. And, especially, making sure we have parts. A lot of people don't realize from home, we have to constantly make sure these parts are in stock. Because if we're going back to back weekends, we got to make sure we have plenty of inventory of parts and making sure, these parts might be on back order because, nowadays it's hard to get parts. So there's always going to be parts on back order. So making sure, that side of it and all the emails, making sure sponsorship, making sure all these parts are in, making sure our registration's good, making sure our pit crew, hotels. So, I'm fortunate enough that my dad helps me a lot with all that to keep that side of it too. But doing that plus, helping at Rivershore, making sure, all that stuff, customer cars are good and all that. I feel like, we're always busy. Sometimes it feels like we're running around like a chicken with his head off. So
yeah, no, for sure. But to the point of like, it is a lot, but it's also cool that a customer can call up Rivershore and say, hey, I want the Brayden Baker car, but I want the play car version of it. Or if they want to race, they can call up and get a race car. That part of it is really cool. 'Cause then they know, hey, this is proven. I'm not, playing the guessing game because I have a lot of friends who call me constantly and they're like, hey, what about this car? What about this part? What do you think about this? And I'm like, I'm not a mechanic. So first off, don't take the final advice from me, but, try and steer them in the right direction. And it's always, one thing connected to another. So I always want to send them to some place like Rivershore where they'll be, taken care of top to bottom. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is, I was talking about this the other day of like, once you expand from short course to desert racing, it's not just the car and the prep. Now it's logistics, chase, like you were saying, now you're managing the sponsorship relationships, you're building content. Like it's a lot of work.
Yeah. And even making sure, when you go desert racing, having pit crew guys, that's like a huge struggle. I know with a lot of racers, there's a lot of people with renting a 6100 truck and they're struggling with pit guys showing up or even knowing people in the industry, that would be willing to help them.
Yeah.
So we were talking to people, at the races and they're like, yeah, we have this bitchin' truck, but, no one really shows up and helps us.
Right.
So, we're fortunate enough to have a lot of people, growing up, like all the plate car guys. And, the last 2 races, we had maybe 4 people there total. Like we're like, hey, you guys want to go chase with us this weekend? And you're like, sure, why not? So
well, I think that's the funny thing is like you grew up with a group of people and now you're their guy. Mm-hmm. They kind of have this incentive to come support you and help you win. But yeah, volunteers are a huge thing in racing, but in particular in off-road racing. Like this whole thing wouldn't work without the volunteers for the teams, the volunteers for the event.
Yeah, the event.
You know, like we have a ton of really fantastic volunteers that, you know, love this. They work their ass off, you know. And it's funny because, you know, I see some of the interactions and, you know, racers pissed off about something, so they're barking at one of the volunteers. And I'm like, hey, that's a volunteer. They don't get paid. They don't need to be here. But you know, they love it as well. But yeah, it becomes like it's like your gang against everybody else's gang, and it's cool because then you're their guy that they're cheering for. It's like, you know, imagine some of those guys going, hey, I met this kid going to the river, and now he, you know, is a championship off-road racer. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, all the people, you know, watching from home too, you know, that's huge. And, you know, I just like all the new technology coming out. You know, this live stream stuff is making a huge difference from, you know, my mom, you know, doesn't have to go to all the races, and now she could watch at home, you know, and all the people, you know, sponsors are like itching to watch, you know, and everybody's watching. They're all sending me clips, you know, during the race. So having that and the pit guides, like during the race, you know, sometimes it's hard to get service. So
Sure.
Now they're watching the live streaming. They're like, oh, they're watching videos, me bumping people. They're watching me, you know, come into the pit. They're like, okay, he's right there. He's coming in. So that's always awesome too. Or they can see from the live stream, you're like, hey, it looks like he might be having an issue. His comms aren't working, you know, he's coming in. It looks like maybe a flat. So now they're ready, or without even having like the comms, okay, they know what to do. Or they know, you know, he's pushing hard, you know, we need a fuel, you know. So
yeah, the ability to live stream in cars with, you know, with Starstream and the other applications, you know, it's really going to change the whole dynamic of the sport. It's really exciting, you know. Starstream, you know, it's bringing a lot. It's bringing a lot.
I feel like a lot too for you guys, for all the media, you know, and having going to all these races and having I know how hard it is for you guys for like the event side, you know, having cameras everywhere and having live stream, you know. I feel like that's awesome for the racers, having a lot of content, and a lot of people, you know, can watch and tie into that, because, you know, a lot of people don't see that like fortune. A lot of people aren't fortunate for that, you know, or being seeing all that. So I mean, I think it's cool, you know, that people from home, you know, because most people aren't there at the race. You know, a lot of the people watching are all from home or they're at work because they don't have time.
Yeah, or they're just not they're not near where we're racing.
Yeah,
I mean,
they might be across the globe.
Yeah,
but now you're able to have those people watch the race series from home or from wherever they're at.
Yeah,
so.
Starlinks are going to change everything, and it's exciting. You know, it's really cool because it makes it more democratic, where people can pick their guy, they can cheer for their guy, they can watch what's going on in his car, you know, on social, and I think that is going to be a big, huge game changer for us in our sport.
Yeah, I know a lot of people saw like how much it stepped up this year, you know, having all the live timing, having like the live feed everywhere. There, everybody gets to see, you know, where he's at on track, on time, and, you know, and it's useful for us too, you know, because we're able to watch that live stream and, you know, get more of an up to date, you know, where they're at. And I feel like that's, you know, seeing the promoters spend a lot of money with getting that going and making it bigger. I feel like every race it's getting better and better.
Attention, Off-Road Nation. It's time to prepare for war. The Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship comes ripping through Parker, Vegas, Reno, and Barstow in 2025. The biggest, baddest, and most prestigious desert off-road championship in the sport just got bigger. It all starts with the return of the Parker 400, January 15th to the 19th in beautiful Parker, Arizona. Then, it's the Super Bowl of off-road racing. The BF Goodrich Tires Mint 400 takes over Las Vegas March 5th through the 9th. Next, mark your calendars. It's a brand new race. The inaugural Reno 600 is coming this spring. Over 600 miles of Nevada desert racing. And finally, it's the exciting conclusion of the Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship, the 4th Annual California 300 in Barstow, California, October 1st to the 5th. Visit unlimitedoffroadracing.com for complete details. The 2025 Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship is coming. The future is unlimited.
Yeah, we definitely invested a lot into timing and scoring. I mean, it was something that drove me crazy as a promoter. You know, in the early days where it was like we're walking into a trailer and nobody knows who won. And it's like one dude in there doing timing and scoring. And, you know, my problem was I knew enough about software to be dangerous. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right, right? So, you know, as we invested and corrected it, and now, you know, now it's live, and, you know, at the bigger events like the Mint, I think we have it broken down into like 4 different sectors. So it's not just every lap, it's every 25 miles that you're getting real time, you know, updates. So, you know, that does give you a lot more information, and, you know, frankly, it's going to change how you race, because now
see where you're losing time.
Yeah, you're going to go like, hey, I'm good. I'm 10 minutes in front of everybody. I don't have to drive crazy, or, you know, or vice versa. I got time I got to put on this guy. I got to go. So I think it's going to make it more technical, you know, as well as like once we get, you know, a lot of the things that are happening in the trucks with, you know, with data being pushed both ways, you know, you're going to be able to see like, oh, you know, that transmission is about to go, or the engine's having problems, or what do we do? How do we make those adjustments on the fly? So I think that's going to be cool too.
Yeah, I've been super stoked. And I at the Mint, you know, the footage was awesome with, you know, seeing the timing and all that. And, you know, there's certain specs where we're like, hey, you're down in this, you know, the first quarter of the, you know, the live or the timing, you know, you're down on time. You need to put time on it. And then the next sector, okay, you put time back on. So having that, you know, is awesome, because, you know, we can't have people on the racetrack or certain sections of where the timing is. So having, you know, the live stream and the live timing, you know, is awesome, useful for us, because we'll be on the radio and there'll be big pit guys are like, hey, you need to pick it up right here, or hey, this guy's pushing, you know, on the last lap, you need to step it up. So, you know, that helped a lot too with especially like California 300. You know, there's certain sections, you know, where we're like, we don't know if we're putting time on people or if we're not. So, you know, we might be overdriving the pace. So
I learned from the McMillans how critical that was, because when there was no electronic version of that, they were doing it, and it was like the old ladies, right? They always would have these older ladies in the pits, and they were doing, you know, split times, and then they were relaying split times. And they were one of the only groups that were doing it at that level, so that they were relaying the information to Mark, and they were relaying the information to Andy, and then later on Luke and Dan, before it was electronic. And I could see like how that would help them make better decisions, you know, about changing the race strategy during the race. And so, you know, as we became promoters, that was one of the things that I looked at on both sides, both for the racers, but also for the spectators. Like, what drove me crazy about the old school way of desert racing is like, you're there for the day, you're not really sure who's in front or what's going on. And I'm like, how is that engaging? We've got to get people engaged. So that was a critical component, and obviously the live stream. And now, you know, we have an interesting challenge, because at the Mint we had 200 streams, which the truck that we have, there isn't a truck that exists that can take that many streams and then sort it out and go, this is what we want to show, right? So we have a interesting technology challenge ahead of us to kind of sort through that, but it's a good problem, because having that amount of content, you know, is good for everybody. It just means more eyeballs.
Yeah, more eyeballs and bringing more sponsors to the table, you know, and having that media where you're able to, you know, show off your car, show off what you have on the car, and using all that stuff, because now you got sponsors, a lot more sponsors involved, where they want to, you know, they want to spend more money with you, or they want to give you more product. Or you're bringing a new sponsor on board because, you know, they like the off-road side of the event side, where there's so much exposure, you know, on the live stream. You know, now they're broadcasting it on every platform, so now you're bringing more people involved, and I feel like that's pretty big nowadays.
Yeah, it's definitely going the right direction. I'm excited about it. So, you've had a good year, I would call it, right? New platform. And are you done racing for the year, or are you gonna squeeze in another race?
There might be one more race before 2025, the new season. We're not sure. We're deciding on that. We kind of want to strip the car to the frame again and kind of just re-go through the whole car again and kind of make sure everything's top notch for the new season and make sure, we could go for the championship. I feel like our goal next year is to win a championship and then go for every win. We want to make sure we have the best car out there. So we want to spend the time now, making sure the car is 100%. I feel like there's the off season always is nice, having a decent amount of time to, not rushed, putting the car back together the right way and making sure everything's perfect.
Yeah, because you need a little redemption at Parker, right?
Yeah, I mean, Parker last year, last year we were leading, I feel like, all day, and we were just unfortunate if we had a diff let go, and it ended up taking driveline out, and then we lost rear axles literally on the last lap leading. So, after, leading for 3+ laps, 120 mile loop or whatever, it was frustrating. I was pretty mad, and watching the leaders go by, and I know we had a good lead too, and it was pretty heartbroken watching the cars go by. And
that one was a soul crusher.
Yeah,
man.
I was so mad.
It's weird for us too, because we're obviously we're fans as well, and we're like, all right, come on, Brayden's killing everybody, it's awesome, right? And then it's like, Killian looks over at me and he goes, I think Brayden has a problem. And I'm like, no, so that one was a bummer, but it's a good race course, and your lap times were really good. It's a fast course. I think it was interesting to see people come out and have problems with it, because I pre-ran that course a lot and I thought, like, okay, this is an easy course. There's like 3 areas where you just got to check up, right? There's a few gotchas out there, and there's always the random rock. But I was surprised at how many people had problems at that race.
Yeah, I feel like there was hardly anybody that finished that race.
Yeah.
I feel like the first lap, there was a big gap from the 10 cars, and then us, the first UTVs that left the line. And I feel like on the first lap, there's only one 10 car in front of us, and most of them broke, and we made a lot of passes. And I was kind of surprised when we went into like even the second lap. We were first overall physically and on time, and I was like kind of mind blown that how many people kept braking, and then comes to find out like the last lap, there's hardly anybody out there, and it goes to show like the attrition nowadays, and we're pushing so hard that these cars are on that fine line. And, it's crazy to see the evolution of the UTVs too, especially with, battling with the 10 cars and battling with the overall. There's certain races where I saw UTV won overall at an event. They beat all the trophy trucks. So it's kind of crazy to see where the UTVs are coming from.
Oh, they're definitely, very capable vehicles and getting better all the time, Plus, like the skills to the drivers, I think, in UTVs is at a very, very high level and continues to get, better and faster. And speaking of Parker, is there, what out of the races that you do, what is your favorite race course?
I love Parker. Growing up, we have a house in Parker, so I love the Parker race. I love the Mint. I mean, and the California 300, obviously, but I feel like, I don't know. I like the Mint atmosphere with downtown. I feel like that race is the best with downtown, like Fremont Street, and that experience you get. It's not like any other race. The dealing with that, and then at Prim, you're at State Line. There's a lot of spectators. You have a cool infield. So I mean, I love that race. But then you go to Parker, you have the cool atmosphere. You grew up out there, or Barstow's where you grew up testing. So I feel like every race has like their little bit of like, you like that race more than the other. So I don't know.
Yeah, for certain things. No, it's interesting because like obviously I love the Mint, but I remember like when we started working out that course, I was really worried. I was like, man, this is just a brutal course, and there's not a lot of passing, and are people going to like it? And fortunately, I think, one thing that we have to recognize is the evolution of both equipment and drivers and racecraft, right? Like, it's not 20 years ago where it was difficult to get good equipment, right? Now everybody has access to good equipment. They have access to good knowledge on racing. So it's just, I think it's easier to do well than it was in the past. But, I really like the California 300 course. Like, I like Parker. Parker gets a little boring to me because of the amount of long sand washes, and you're just kind of like, all right, we're just going, and you're in a sand rut, and you're just you're going with it, right? You're not really making driving decisions. Whereas the California 300 is like a driver's course. It's diverse. There's elevation changes. It's technical, but not overly technical. There's rough, but there's a lot of room for passing. So to me, that one feels more like the best race course, and can provide for the best actual racing, which means having the ability to pass and and set people up and so on.
Yeah, I feel like the California 300, in my opinion, is probably the best driver course. I feel like there's a lot more technical where, it's more of, how you're going to, it's more of a driver course, how you're going to come into a corner, how you're going to apex, how are you going to, how's your suspension? I mean, out there, it's pretty brutal out there with, suspension. So I was telling my dad, like, we went to another race last week and it was all pure straightaways. And I'm like, it's not a driver's course. So I was like, it's just whoever has a faster car. And I was just getting killed in all these straightaways. And I'm like, well, I got to wait till the washes. I got to wait till it's more technical where, the driver part will come in and boom, and then I'll catch back up to this person. And then all of a sudden they hit a straightaway and it's like he's 10 miles down the road, it felt like. So I feel like the California 300 was more of a driver course, and I felt like that showed on the lap times that, you don't have to drive the car hard if you're a better driver. You just keep your momentum everywhere.
Yeah. And I think that's an important note, right? Like, I think, ultimately off-road racing is about suspension, like that's really what makes off-road unique, right? In suspension, not just in going straight through stuff, but what's your car doing in the corners and how is it set up, and what is the driver doing and so on. It's a really like three-dimensional chess, right? And we want to create challenging courses, right? That really challenge the vehicle platforms and the drivers, and not just have this, super long flat straightaway. Because to me, that's rally racing. Right?
Yeah. I felt like especially like I feel like the shock setup. We worked so hard, trying to get a good platform with Justin with these Fox shocks, and these are shocks you could put on your play car, like they're bone stock from the OEM shocks with the springs and valving, and we wanted to make use the stuff you could put on your play car and put it on your race car. So I feel like we spent a lot of time to fine-tuning this race car specifically for the off-road training and my driving style. Everybody drives differently. Some people like the car super stiff, some people like it soft, some people like medium, so just kind of getting the car to work with your driving style.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think that's rad. Well, thank you for doing this. That was awesome, man. And good luck. And we're going to see you at Parker.
Yeah, super stoked for Parker.
Awesome.